Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're just going to give everybody 30 seconds or so to find their way into the room. So you should have a chat box and you should have a Q&A box. So those that are here, maybe pop something in the chat. Make sure you can hear me, see myself and Helen. Tell us where you are today. Tell us where you're joining from, just so we know that the chat box works. It's always a good way to start a session, isn't it? Making sure that all of the technology is working effectively. And I don't know why I asked this, Helen, because when nobody puts anything in, you think, well, can they see us? It
I know.
works. So,
Well, you
so
see, I
Helen's
posted, but I'm not sure if
Helen's
I
here.
count.
But
I
thank you,
always say
Helen.
there's a prize for the person who does it, then I always dishonor that offer, but it tends to make people put something in. But yeah, they're just oh look, there we are. Oh, Norwich.
Excellent. Thank you, Daisy. And it is overcast in Norwich today. So let me just share my screen and we will almost be ready to get cracking. So we do appreciate everybody joining us this morning. We know everybody's busy. It's April. Everyone started their tax returns and getting tax returns filed. Well, good morning, everybody. We're delighted to present our App of the Month webinar for April, and I'm delighted that we are here with Futrli by Sage, and in particular, Helen Cockle. Helen and I have done many of these webinars over the years, so really looking forward to sharing some insight with you this morning. We are talking about the evolution of forecasting and reporting from Excel to software solutions. I'll get Helen to introduce herself in just a moment, but Helen has been in this space for a very long time, so has lived and breathed this evolution that we're going to be talking about this morning. So just in terms of introductions, housekeeping, we schedule an hour for these, but I do my very, very best to try and wrap them up in 45 minutes so that we make sure that people haven't got to jump straight out of one meeting into another. But we have time if there are loads of questions at the end. If you have any questions as we go through the session, do pop them into the Q&A box and I shall keep an eye on that and we will pick them up as we go through. But we will have an opportunity at the end for you to ask any questions you have. Use the chat box for any comments, observations and things as we go through the session. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how it all goes. So anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Will Farnell. I'm founder at Farnell Clark, a accountancy firm in Norfolk, and co-founder and director of App Advisory Plus. And I wear a number of other hats. I've written a couple of books. The last, which was published by Sage in May 2023, called The Human Firm. And I have no doubt that we will be touching on some of the content of that during the session today. And as I say, I'm delighted to be joined by Helen. Helen, would you like to tell everybody who you are if they don't know you?
Of course. I'm also in the book. I was just about to
You are.
chip in there and go, oh, I'm in that book. Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Helen Cockle. I really need to change that photo because that shows what happens when you sit in the space for as long as I have done, is that you age dramatically. So I really need to update any kind of imagery of me. But I have in this space. I was part of the team that took Futrli to market, which was over 10 years ago now. Very different landscape at that point. We were very much talking about cloud. Is it safe? Do we need to hang on to our server? But we very quickly saw the conversation evolve into actually what can we do with all this juicy data that we've got. And it's been a really interesting journey for me, particularly through the acquisition by Sage, which happened 2 years ago next month now. But watching the evolution of the market to actually start grabbing hold of this data and using it in a way that they never have done before, and watching technology evolve to support that changing demand from accountants. So yeah, it's been a fun 10 years. And even before that, I worked with accountants. My entire career has been spent with accountants. So it's a space I know very, very well.
Excellent. And what's your current activity at Sage then, Helen?
Current role, yeah. So I've extended beyond now. They've given me, so since joining Sage, I've basically picked up the other acquisitions that they made. So I'm also responsible, in addition to Futrli, for Go Proposal and Auto Entry, and really just driving the acquisition of the horizontal apps that sit around the ledger,
Yeah,
to ensure that firms really truly do digitalize, because we'll come onto it, but the data in is as important as the data out. So really getting that alignment
absolutely.
between all three products is critical.
Yeah, a topic very close to my heart there. So we shall talk in great depth about that. So what are we going to talk about? We've done some welcomes and introductions. We're going to talk about the importance for cash flow forecasting for clients. We all saw what happened during COVID, and we just need to help clients understand what they need rather than what they think they want. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that both Helen and I see firms have in finding the kind of the early stages of delivering these services to clients. How do you start it? How do you get the ball rolling? And then how do you do it at scale? And we're going to talk specifically about some of the pros and cons of using Excel for this space and what the opportunities are as you scale to develop the offering, bring in technology that's been designed specifically to do this alongside your general ledgers. So we'll look at what you need in terms of capacity and capability to scale cash flow forecasting, reporting, advisory, if we want to use that kind of broad catch-all term. Firstly, to generate real value to clients, but secondly, to generate revenue and profit for you as accounting and bookkeeping firms. We'll touch on some of the limitations of Excel in terms of the value that we can deliver to clients. And then really using the power of technology that's available to all of us. The reason that I wrote the second book is that we have a level playing field. From a technology point of view, we can all go out and use the same tech. So how do we differentiate what we do going forward? And as I say, loads of opportunities for questions. So pop them in as we go through the session. But equally, if you've got any at the end, throw them in and we will do our best to answer them. So let's get cracking. Before I disappear with the slides, Helen, so you touched very basically on there in terms of Futrli. So what is Futrli by Sage? Where did it come from? What was the pain point it was solving in the early days? And what are you doing now?
Oh, I mean, how have we got? I think headlines is, for anybody who doesn't know Futrli, it's the ultimate advisory platform for accounting firms. And I think this is firms, whether they're looking to replace existing processes, which is one of the subjects we're talking about, whether they're looking to scale and move beyond maybe some manual processes that they've got, but also if they're just looking to start introducing advisory. Advisory is a well overused phrase, which is probably a webinar in its own right. But anybody who wants to start moving beyond compliance with their end users, and that could be because their end users putting their hand up, or they can just see the opportunity from within their client base and they really want to set their stall out at delivering the ultimate client experience, or whether you're just trying to do one-off forecasts or one-off analysis for a client, Futrli has got all the capability to be able to deliver that within the one platform. But it's important to know it's not our first piece of advisory software. And I think this is a thing. Oh, have I frozen or is it you, Will? Who knows? It might be Norwich, it might be Brighton. Oh, Will, can you still hear me? Yeah, you froze then.
I think it was me. I think
Brilliant.
it
So
was
I
me,
was
not
just
you.
dancing for the audience. Look, it's not our first bit of advisory software. And I think this is a really important point because I think if you look at Apple, how many times have they evolved the iPhone? And it's because they're constantly getting the user feedback, they're understanding the market, they're understanding actually how people, the bits that people value and the bits that are kind of clunky and in the way. So when we first brought our product out to market way back in, I can't even do the maths, but over 10 years ago, we were very much servicing our accounting customers for their largest clients because that's where advisory sat. Because back to the point I made at the beginning, at that point, it was very much about driving digitalization of the ledger. So firms started with their largest clients because, of course, they were the most tech savvy. They were the ones they could make the biggest savings on. They're the ones that were the time suckers. But also, they were the clients that had management of accounts, financial statements. They had all that advisory work set up. So we were very much designed to support them now that they've got all of that lovely ledger software online to be able to move and transition the existing advisory services off Excel, off the reports that they produced each month into a platform that connected and updated in real time. So that was the market we made our initial play for into this space because that was what the market was asking for. But of course, as that digitalization of the ledger really started to get the pace, we started to recognize that the softwares that were designed back then, and this actually goes for all of us that were at that point, there was our Spotlight Fathom, we'd built to service the 10% of a client base, but it was very much leaning into the accountant. It was heavy lifting. You had to do a lot of the preparatory work. There was a lot of data prep. There was a lot of building. There was all the reports had to be created each month. You know, it took a lot of time. Now, that was great for the clients that are paying the big advisory bill, but it's not great if you want to scale it to clients that are maybe just beginning to do advisory. So we set out about, gosh, probably 7 years ago now, 6 years ago now, and thought there's definitely a play here. We now understand that accountants want to do advisory. SMEs, particularly post-COVID, want to know more about how they're running and understand more about cash flow. What do we need to do with our existing product in order to enable that scaling? And one of the big challenges we saw was the selling of advisory to clients that didn't have it, because it's hard. Accountants aren't natural salespeople, although they are. They just like to say that they're not salespeople. So accountants like to say they're not salespeople, but they have great client relationships, and therefore they can. But also, often you have to present the numbers in order to get the buy-in from the end customer. Well, if you've got to do a load of preparatory work to sit down and pitch potentially where you can add value, where the opportunity is, why they should be looking at their cash flow, that hits the cost of sale for accountants, which is their time. So suddenly it becomes a really expensive exercise in order to try and engage with your client base. And so we found our accountants just hitting this block of going, we just haven't got the time or the capacity, or actually from a profitability perspective, to be able to start driving advisory services. So we knew in our next platform, that was one of the big things that we had to nail. We had to surface really accurate insights instantly, so the accountants could lean on that in order to start those conversations. But we then also realized that not everybody bounces from that point straight into scenario planning. There's a journey all of our small businesses or their small businesses need to go on. It might be just a 1-year budget. It might just be some initial insights. It might be some really light, well, how does your cash flow look for the next 6 months? But then you can evolve that. So we appreciated that we didn't need to start with really big advisory. We needed to give the accountants the ability to do bite-sized advisory whilst they build and educate their client base into moving into the big, wonderful world of management accounts and statutory reports and all the other joyful things that can come with it. So those elements combined also with back in the day, and you'll remember this, Will, where all of the advisory softwares came with certification and hours of training and the words onboarding. Firms haven't got time. There's so much tech in a practice now. If everybody has to go through certification and onboarding, you'd never get another tax file done. So we very much knew that in addition to those pieces, we needed to be able to get them in and understanding the product instantly. So the user experience, the UX, was critical in our design. It had to be plug and play. So those three core elements, plus a load of other learnings that we'd had from our first product, went into the latest platform that then we launched about 3 years ago. And it does all of those things. And I'm going to show everybody the platform in a bit, but it kind of shows the evolution, not only of us as a software business that are constantly looking to support our accountants better, to be able to enable them to build us into workflows that service all of their clients from their smallest through to their biggest, but also so shows the evolution of accountants. 10 years ago, the conversations were so different. And I think we've got to understand that the conversations we're having today, they're going to change again in the next 2, 3, 4 years as we get even further down this route. And whilst we know that we've digitalized from a ledger perspective. So I told you it was going to be a long answer, but that's the journey and that's my answer.
Well, that's great, and there's so much that I want to pick up in that, and I mean, I guess the start point is we probably just need to deal with this kind of what's advisory, and you and I have a very simplistic view on that. The one thing that the point I want to make to really underpin and validate why this stuff is so important. I was at an event about 6 weeks or so ago now, and a chap talking there was Microsoft's former chief envisioning officer, and he talked about a McKinsey study into AI, and because we're tight for time, the summary was McKinsey, big strategic management consultancy in the US, have said that by 2030 we are not going to be doing 60% of what we do at work today. So we as accountants and bookkeepers are in one of those spaces where technology is going to do a lot of the things that we do, particularly around the data entry, the processing. So therefore, if you have 60% of your capacity back in your hands in less than 6 years, I mean, that's what we're talking about here. What are you going to do with that 60% of time? And I mentioned the book earlier. This is the whole crux of the book, is that look, we have to be human. We have to focus on the things that the AI is not going to be able to do for us. So these kind of conversations, I know we've been having them for years and years and
And
years.
I also, I'm going to challenge. I don't love scare tactics because I think, these AI is going to take over the world and we're all going to sit there and just not be able to move our arms, which is, and this is where they want to take us. I don't disagree that AI is something we should lean into because it
Yeah,
absolutely does remove the laborious, repetitive tasks. But that's not the
yeah,
reason we should do it. It's the same way that everyone said compliance was dead. You remember this about
yeah,
8 years ago.
yes,
We very foolishly jumped on that bandwagon briefly, then we got back off
yeah,
it because we realized everything actually just starts with compliance.
it does.
So I think
Yeah,
my view is everything just starts with the logic of AI. If you can use technology to replace those repetitive processes, then you can have access to that
yes,
60% gain in
yeah.
time. And you're
That's
right on the
exactly the
human.
point. Yeah,
Oh, is it?
that,
You see,
yeah,
saying the same
that,
thing as ever.
and it's a case of looking at how can we leverage it. And I think the way I think about AI is Sage have just launched Copilot,
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft have launched Copilot. You haven't launched Autopilot, and this is the point. That's the distinction. So Copilot is going to do the things that you might ask a junior to do. And the thing is, when
Exactly.
you ask a junior to do something, you review it and you check it. And the same thing's going to apply here, but what it
Mm-hmm.
means is you don't have to use that junior.
Agree.
And therefore we have to think about how we develop and train new accountants doing different things because we can't stop having juniors. So this is but it's recognizing that we're going to have this capacity, and
Agree.
that's a massive opportunity for us, and it's how we're going to use that opportunity. So I knew we'd digress very quickly here, Helen, but let's get so advisory. I mean, you and I talked about this, and we've both agree that it's basically having great relationships with your clients, and I use the phrase that my firm will be doing advisory, and every client we've got picks up the phone and asks every question they've got. Um, and it is as simple as that.
Which I think I've been asked so many times over the years, and that it genuinely is a worry that technology is going to replace accountants, in a headline. But it's where I think people are missing the mark is actually the value is the breadth of experience that comes with an accountant's mind, and that's what we need to tap into. They'll
Yes.
have seen it before, they'll have seen other strategies, they'll have seen other things that businesses have done, and actually what we're going to do is free up the time so that the value that they add is leaning into that huge. I mean, what other business have you got? If you think as a business that's got an in-house accountant, they've got a very single-minded breadth of experience because it's within that one sector. The
Yes.
accountants have got this huge breadth that can see across a whole different range of business size, types, the ways that they work, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they can
Yeah.
draw on that to then give advice to their individual small businesses in a way that no other accountant can. And I think
Yes.
that's where it's exciting, and that's advice. It's them leaning into that knowledge base to be able to help and
Yeah.
support their small business to
Yeah. And
navigate their path.
we're as accountants and bookkeepers, we're really nice people. We want to help. We want to help our
They
clients.
do.
We do help our clients, and therefore we do advisory already. Our biggest challenge is often we don't charge for it because we don't have it systemized. We don't have processes for it, and that's definitely one of the things we're going to talk about. And we should probably get onto the agenda, shouldn't we, a little bit, Helen? We talked on kind of the importance for cash flow forecasting as one area of advisory, and it is just one area of advisory, and it's reporting as well, isn't it? It's making sure that we can help our clients understand what's going on, and I'm sure many people listening will have watched The Apprentice and the chap that got to the
I
final
can't
with
watch it.
eyes. Well, you'll like this. So this guy who made the final, when he had his interview, said that he didn't really know how his finances were because he hadn't seen any accounts for 6 months. Um, and he was kind of ripped apart on the basis, and he blamed the accountants, of course. He had lots of problems with accountants, and but this is the point. Clients need this stuff, and I think one of the things that I talked about in the book is I think we have an obligation, which is a strong word as accountants and
I
bookkeepers,
agree.
to help our clients understand the things they need. So they think they don't need this stuff, but we know that they do. So therefore, how do we position it, and how do we ensure that clients understand why they need to know what their cash looks like, why they need to know what their performance is in their
And
business.
this is where, and Will, because I was going to actually ask you a question on the importance of cash flow. I don't think there's anyone on this call who's an accountant doesn't understand the importance of cash flow. But what I've heard over the years is my client doesn't want it. Now,
Yeah,
it's whose responsibility, in your view, is that? Because I would challenge that you don't know what you don't know, and
yeah.
therefore it's the accountant's obligation to open them up to the understanding. But
That's kind of where,
that tends to be
yeah,
the blocker for most firms. Too small, they don't want it, they don't
yeah.
understand it, they won't pay for it.
But the interesting point is, and controversially, I've said this many times, in that situation, when I've challenged accountants on it and said, have you asked them? The
Mm-hmm.
answer is normally no, because I know. I just know.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and so it's our own mindsets that become the blocker. And actually what it is because, and it comes back to your point around accountants can sell, but they need help to understand the right way to do it. And actually what many people will do is they'll think, well, I need to sell cash flow forecasting. And actually you don't. You need to sell the reason that they need cash flow forecasting. So rather than saying, oh, we've looked at your accounts and your cash is declining and everything else, we should really do some forecasting. It should be like what keeps you awake at night? Like, are you sleeping okay? And
But you see, it's the same with us. You know, I have this challenge that I've picked up these other brands is that we have a habit in Sage of going, hey, do you want to have auto entry to our
yeah,
accounting firms? And actually, you don't sell the brand, you don't sell the product name like a cash
yeah,
flow. You sell the value. Why should they have it? Why? How is it going to change your practice? What is it going to revolutionize? Where's the time saving? What's their current processes? And it's exactly the same for accountants talking about cash flow or KPIs or whatever it is. It's
yeah,
about bringing it to life not as a strap line and saying, hey, do you want to have more advisory services? It'll cost you £250 a month. It's
yes,
about going, look, let's just get in and understand your business and then bring it to life through
yeah.
the impact that they will have.
And this comes back to the crux of all of this. It's about the relationship. It's about understanding the client, what their challenges are, what their objectives are, and sometimes we're too busy. I mean, I talked in the book about the evolution of what we've done as accountants, and we 25 years ago we had these great relationships that we got invites to
Mm.
the birthdays, weddings, funerals, and everything else. And then compliance got in the way and regulation, and it detracted us, and we focused on other things over and above the relationship. But we're at the point now where we can get that relationship back, but fundamentally we're in a better place because that relationship is underpinned by great data,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the ability to surface information that we didn't have access to 25 years ago. So everything's coming together. That means we can have massive impacts right now with our clients. And we talked about COVID briefly, and that saw everybody suddenly understanding the importance of cash flow, and the importance of knowing what's going on and where you are. I mean, the thing with COVID is that there was loads of support, wasn't there? I mean, that people could get money,
You
whereas with
always tell a really
challenge,
good story on this, Will. So I like your theory on COVID. It was the information that the value of accountants, the relationship between accountants and small businesses during COVID was just elevated because there was so
yeah,
much information that was being passed, and
yeah,
relationships just ramped right the way up because the accountant became the valued trusted advisor for this thing that was going
yes,
on.
yeah,
And I think let's not, and we have, and time has gone by now, and unless that was maintained and looked after, then we'll be back on the downward trajectory. But actually
yes,
that position as the valued trusted advisor can be there just with their business insights, and they can become the informer for what's going on, what's going well, what's
yeah,
not going well. And tech enables that conversation in the same way that the government provided the information for the COVID
yes,
updates. Tech can
yeah.
provide information for the SME updates and what they need to talk to
Yes.
them about.
Yeah. And it was this idea that I was talking to firms that said, "Oh, my clients are really valuing what we're doing at the moment. They're kind of saying what a great job we're doing." And there was a correlation between
Mm.
that response from clients and the fact that accountants were going out to their clients every 2 weeks and
Yes.
saying, "Hey, this happened. Here's how you can get some funding. Here's how furlough works. You can get this loan. You can get this support." So the challenge then is, well, what are you as a firm owner or an accountant or bookkeeper going to do when the government stops feeding you that information? How do you maintain that dialogue with your clients? But I think right now we've seen rising interest rates, we've seen economic challenges, we've seen impact of minimum wage. I mean, that hasn't quite hit yet, but that's going to hit massively.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so right now, I think small businesses are facing a bigger challenge than they did during COVID, because during COVID, there was handouts.
Yeah,
Hey, have some money. We'll get you through this. We've got equal challenges now in terms of what's going on in the economy, yet that support isn't there. So it's still really important that we do this and we help our clients understand why they need this support, not
yeah.
that they want it or they don't want it. We need to educate. So what are the challenges, Helen? Why do firms struggle to do this? I mean, my start point on this is always data. And
Yes.
we fell into that trap very early on. Oh, great, we're using cloud ledgers and we can bolt on all these great products, and then realize that, well, actually we haven't got the data. So we need to start doing the bookkeeping really regularly so we get the data that feeds the systems. We talked about that a lot, but what else do you see firms
I
struggle
think it's
with?
getting basic structures set up in firms. I think it's really kind of committing to it. I think advisory, I've just used the word, but I will, for the ease of this session, use the word advisory for delivering those extra services. But, if we're only doing it bespoke and one-off, then one, it's not efficient, but also it doesn't become the core stick of rock approach to how that practice is going to evolve. And it doesn't go on the website, it doesn't go in the conversations. Your client managers aren't going to be talking about it in the same way. It just tends to be one person here and there. And actually, if you make the decision to do more for you with your clients and deliver a next level of service to your clients, it has to run right from the top, right the way down through to the bottom. But
Yeah,
around that comes the structure that I was talking about. If you do decide to go for it, and it doesn't have to be some big project, by the way, it really doesn't. But if you do decide to go for it, let's just get the basics right. Pricing, process, how are we going to do this? What is our standard? What is the thing we're going to be known for? What is our USP? How are we going to delight our customers? What do we want our small businesses to say about us when they go to the pub and sit next to their other small business who's with another accounting firm? What do we want them to land with them so that we get that referral back? So it's just getting the kind of basic understanding of that as a practice, and not being afraid of not getting it right on version one. Because I think there's this thing, often advisory is seen as this huge big project that's going to take 2 years, and we're going to get out the door, we've got pricing strategy meetings, and we're going to rebrand everything and have printed documents and brochures and all these things, and before you know it, we'll suddenly find ourselves in FY25 and there'll be some other economic crisis. It doesn't have to be that big. Actually, a test and learn period tends to be the most effective way that we've seen accountants go out with. So it's, as a whole practice, we are going to do this, and this is what we're going to be known for, and this is how we're going to start really raising our game with our small businesses. And this is what we're going to start with. We've got this batch of small businesses that we know that, one, we could generate more revenue out of, but two, we want to retain them because they are on a trajectory where we know they're going to become a really successful small business. It's an interesting sector. They're just really nice people, all of those things. And this set of clients, we're going to test what our proposition looks like. And
yeah,
then they do test, and it might be over egging it. I always go, Airbnb always had a rule at the beginning: do the unscalable to scale. And I've sworn by it throughout the whole thing. And so the Airbnb founders would go out into the Airbnbs and photograph them at the beginning. The Airbnb host didn't know they were the founders, but they'd
yeah,
go in, they'd experience it, they'd kind of test it, they'd open all the cupboards, they'd photograph it, and they started to understand what their experience was out there into their client base, so they can take it back. And actually, one of the questions they used to keep, I digress completely now, but one of the questions they used to ask is, what would you do? What would you want Airbnb to do to really scale what they're currently offering you if you had no, all bets are off? And they said wrapping experiences around it. So that's where the experience piece came from Airbnb.
yeah,
It's the founders being on the floor and asking the right questions and understanding
yes,
what's going on.
yeah,
So don't be afraid in that pilot period of doing a little bit more, delivering gold standard, working out which bits are valuable, which bits aren't, how cost effective certain things are. You're not going to get it right once. And as a tech company, trust me, you do this thing and you come back and you adjust and you do. But the upside is you're always going up the staircase. You're not
yeah,
going back down it, or just standing on the bottom step wondering about how it could look if you went up the steps.
yeah.
Don't be afraid to constantly course correct it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I digressed massively there. This is
That's fine. That's fine, Helen. All
danger of
useful.
having me on webinars.
So the start point for this is firms might be in this situation where they say, well, we can see the value of these products, but we haven't got enough clients to make it work. So let's stick to what we know. Let's stick to Excel. We'll do our forecasting on Excel. We'll use our ledger to produce some management accounts. Uh, is that sensible? What's your take on all this?
But I don't think it's just Excel. Excel has a place, by the way. It's really important. Both Will and I want to land this. Excel absolutely is a really good tool. However, what we talk about here is scaling, doing things and you leaning into technology to free up that time. But it's not just Excel, it's existing processes of technology. Back to
Yes.
the point I made at the beginning, technology evolves. Don't be afraid of going, actually, this one now is the old technology. And I know that our processes are set up, but let's go and have a look at the new technology that's out there to replace it. Because the key thing is about saving that time, actually properly enabling you to scale. And I think the challenge you have with, let's pick on Excel for this. Challenge you have with Excel is that it is really expensive. It's very time consuming. We all know it's error prone. There's 4 million examples of where it's been error prone. But also from the client experience, which is ultimately we're a service sector, it's just not the best experience. And the accountant's role is, as a service provider, to do the very best they can for their end client. Well, actually, an Excel spreadsheet isn't that. And however comfortable they are with it, we know that we could make them more comfortable with real-time reports, beautiful dashboards, deeper insights, all of those things that come with technology. We could all still be using a flip out Samsung phone, but we don't, or the Nokia did, but we didn't because actually, yes, it worked, but there's better options. And I think that's where we have to really look. Are we delivering the very latest, the very best option for the end user?
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of limitations and things of Excel, and where is the right time for people to say, okay, we're going to focus now. We're going to use this new breed of technology to enable us to deliver these services more effectively to our clients.
Joe, I'm going to tell you a story. So when we were going through, just after our first VC raise at Futrli, this is pre-stage acquisition, we got ourselves a CFO. So we stopped outsourcing our accounting, got somebody internally, and he was brilliant, really experienced CFO who was wedded to a spreadsheet and wedded. And this spreadsheet, I can't remember what we called it, it was something like the brain, but it was astonishingly massive, had 5,000 tabs, was the world, but he understood how it worked and it did everything it needed to do because he'd used it for the past 30 years. It took Hannah and I a year to persuade him to come into Futrli. Do you know, he now is on all his CFO chats. He no longer works for us because, of course, when we were acquired, he disappeared. But, all his CFO chats, he's like, you have to use technology, because once he'd made the change, he's like, why? Why didn't I do this sooner? He's like, it's mind blowing what you can do with it. So is there a right time? Well, as far as I'm concerned, immediately. But realistically, a little bit like the small businesses, we do have to take a little bit of a journey and to understand what we're trying to get out of it, where we think it can improve it, where the headaches are in existing processes so that you can validate it properly.
Okay, so is this a reasonable time for you to jump in and just give a brief
Yes, probably
overview
before we run out of time,
of
Will.
of,
So
of
I
kind of
I
why
will.
people should be stepping away from Excel, using tools that are built for this purpose?
Yeah, so I'll give a quick flash through Futrli now, and this will not be some big sales pitch for everyone on the call, so please don't worry. This will just be a flash through of where tech can really lean into existing processes to start to showcase some of the stuff I talked about at the beginning of whether it's you're trying to invest in your compliance clients and give them that education into where you can start to add value, or whether you're replicating existing processes.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will tick some of those boxes. Then of course catch up with the team with deeper demos afterwards, because this will be very light touch. But stop talking, Helen, and share your screen. Let's see if you can see that. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. We are all good.
Okay, good. So the first thing on screen now, you've got a dashboard, which is the insights dashboard. Now, you're probably thinking, where on earth do these numbers come from? And this is where Futrli is really snazzy in the new version. So as soon as you connect up the ledger software, which is Sage, Xero, QBO, as soon as you connect it up, we go off and we build a full three-way cash flow forecast. Now, The punchy thing about this is we've always done that. We always did it based on last year's actuals in our first products. But in this platform, we actually use our own algorithms. So very much like AI, but we've built our own that think like an accountant. So we can get a level of accuracy that means it needs minimal adjustment. So on average, our initial forecast that's done in 3 seconds for a business is around the 85% accurate mark. So it's a really good conversation starter. It's a level of accuracy that you can genuinely go into that first conversation and say, look, this is how we think your business is going to look. This is what's going on. This is potentially areas we should look at. To support that first initial forecast that we make, we've also created some out-of-the-box dashboards as the backdrop for that conversation. So this is the first one on the home screen, and it basically just shows historical performance because, of course, we pull that from the ledger software. But then it's got business insights. So looking at this financial year ahead, how is the business performing? How is it performing against, once you have saved a budget, but also we've got information around the customers and suppliers. And it's that bit that makes us at nearly 85% accurate on that first forecast, because we don't just do a 3-way cash flow forecast. And this is where technology is moved on, because it is now a 3-way cash flow forecast based on historical transactional performance. So we go and look at each of the historical transactions, understand whether it's a cash transaction, journal, invoice, the payment days behind those invoices, the customers behind those invoices. Do they pay late? Do they pay early? We've also got all due invoices and bills sitting in there layered on top of it, so you can see the short-term piece of the puzzle. And all of that information is then built into our forecast, which projects future transactions, and then of course includes all those invoices and bills that are missing. So we've got a load of customers to supplier info that, again, we surfaced on these insights dashboards straight off the bat in that first conversation with the client, and you can wrap it into a compliance meeting. You're already meeting them, you're going through what's happened in the year, signing off tax returns, whatever it is. Hey, look, let's just have a quick look at your business. This is how we think you're going to perform in the year ahead. We've got additional performance pages, which again do the same thing, but start to drill into areas of interest. So cash flow forecasting, again, you don't have to build these. These are out of the box. They're ready to go. So once they start going, look, how is my cash looking? I'm worried about it. You can see there's cash flow pains. We've got the cash flow projection for the next 3 years. We've got the proportion of cash that's coming in and out from bills and invoices. We've got the accounts that bring in the most money. We've also got predictions across the P&L and some high-level KPIs across the P&L and balance sheet performances. But the really juicy bit comes in the forecast that I talked about at the beginning, because that is to get them hooked. That's to start the education piece. But in the forecasting, you can see here, we've got that instant forecast that we build when we first sign up, which is what we call the daily tracker forecast. We continue to build that all the time, by the way, in the background. So we will always update that daily tracker, and we call it the daily tracker because it's tracking daily performance, and it will update projections based on how we're tracking as a business. So if we start to see a sudden uptake in sales, our future projections will be impacted and forecasted accordingly. But we've also got the ability in here to build any kind of forecast that you want. So 1-year P&L, a 3-year cash flow, or of course the 3-year cash flow with the due invoices and bills. There's loads of ways of building forecasts out from within Futrli. So you can build them from scratch. Back to what we were doing before, when you sit with your spreadsheet, you can go and start from the beginning, use the chart of accounts and just build it out based on assumptions that come from the clients. You can, of course, create it from last year's actuals. Again, where tech has improved from those softwares I was talking about before, the other forecasting softwares. Last year's actuals meant October last year, forecast for October this year. Again, we don't. We look at a level of granularity now with our algorithms that will look at those individual transactions and replicate that for the last year's actuals forecast. But then create with the auto predictions. So I am just, I've got to give it a name. There we go. I'm just going to show you how fast it is and what the output that you get from this. So to give, again, that 60% of time that we want to get back. So there you go. I mean, I couldn't even say the sentence. We've already created the forecast, and you can see across the top, we've got all due invoices and bills that are sitting against that account, and that's been pulled in from the chart, from the bookkeeping software. We've got the full chart of accounts across the full P&L across the top, and then of course we've got the P&L balance sheets and cash flow statements. But I just want to come into invoices and bills because, again, they've got lots of different clients sitting in firms, and advisory is not just for the big clients. If you've got clients that have really short-term cash flow needs, again, this part of Futrli is really punchy. So in here, you can sort by invoices and bills. So if you just want to go and look at the invoices, for example, we can go and pull all those up. We can look at when they're due. So again, this one's overdue, so it will be sitting in the cash flow forecast for today. But if we know they're not going to pay us, or they're going to do split payments, whatever it might be, we can say, actually, they're going to pay the whole lot. Oh, 7.5. Someone's been playing with my demo. Oh, 750. I can't read at pace. And they're not going to pay us until end of July. Hit save. Then that invoice, that payment, that cash will now come into the right period. So you can get really accurate on the short-term cash. You can do that in bulk, by the way. Everyone always asks me that, but you can update a load of them at once, which again is really useful for in the bill side of it. What happens? This client's got no money this week. If we bounce all of the bills forward by a month, how does the business look? Does it get out of any problems, or do we need to go and have a conversation with the IWOCs or the sweeps or whatever? If we just go into the P&L, again, this is designed to make it a really trusted platform for our accounting firms. One, you can see everything on the invoices and bills and it's in there and you can adjust it. But two, those automated prediction lines that we've generated, we highlight, but we also give you the reason why we forecasted at that particular amount. So again, confidence behind the numbers. You've got rhetoric as to where this has come from. You don't have to go scurrying around and looking at the historical ledger performance. We've generated it for you. You can toggle off any of the automated predicted lines very easily, just toggle it off. And then, of course, I mean, we were always known for our forecasting capability. The forecasting assumption builder in here has got all the options you could possibly imagine. So if you want to go and add your own assumption, you can add unit assumptions. We're going to sell 10 units at 25 quid. We've got repeating methods. So we're going to do £200 a month for the next 12 months. We've got freestyles, just type in the amount in whichever period you wish, but then we also have the formula builder. Now, this is, back to what I said at the beginning, this is you start to get more advanced with your clients. And this is the point, we will grow as your conversations with your clients grow. So the formula builder enables you to reference any of the data sets sitting in Futrli. So you've got the entire historical performance across the chart of accounts, any predicted performance across the chart of accounts, and then also things like non-financial data sets that you bring in or drivers that you bring in that are influencing the performance of different accounts. And it's really easy to say, right, income times 10%, for example, would just create that formula line. But we've also got things like if statements. So again, for the more advanced customers that are really paying for you to create those big forecasts, in here you can start to build out the likes of if statements. And again, dead easy to use because it's built on Excel formulas. So if you can use Excel, you will be an absolute whiz from within here. You're just leaning into a chart of accounts rather than leaning into a cell to reference a point. So there's the forecasting piece. And once you've built your forecast, you can then just publish it. And then once you've published it, it becomes locked. So if it's a budget, you can lock it. And then it becomes something that is then trackable. Now, that trackable piece is where the advisory becomes more than one-off, because it may well be that they just want to have a one-off report. But actually, if we lock it in and then start to build reporting around it, guess what? You can then reference it on an ongoing basis. The home screen's great for that because you can then go and reference the one that we just built, wherever, I don't know what I called it, but something like that. You can go and reference that forecast that you just built, and it will give you snapshots that say, hey, this is how you're performing. Quick update here on how client engagement, back to what Will was saying before, is using this, you can actually schedule this template to go out to your client weekly, fortnightly, daily, if you wish. So back to Will's point, when COVID was happening and those every 2 weeks engagement with your clients, actually you can become their trusted source by getting the software to automatically send their dashboard of how they're performing. And it looks really nice. Insights for your business. This is how you're performing. This is how you're performing against budget. This is what's happening across your customers and suppliers. So again, it starts to get you up front and present within that client base. But then we also have the more traditional, if you like, reports and dashboards. So from within here, you can build any report to look at any data set. We've got a load of pre-built reports in here. I mean, there are hundreds of them that you can then use. And I'll just click on it and show you how easy it is, because then I will stop talking. But you can see I've just clicked a template now. It's going to pull in all of that forecast that we just created. So it's automatically updated, and any actuals are historical. And then as I scroll down, you can see the charts and graphs that are in here. Any of these can be updated. So you can see on the left, right-hand side, even of the screen, you can see, you can change the title of it, the data sets we're looking at. So actually, in this case, we're looking at actual data in prior year, but you could bring in the daily tracker forecast as well. You can see it's just drag and drop. So it's really easy to add as many data sets as you wish. So if you want to start comparing scenarios, again, as your conversations evolve with clients, you can bring in multiple data sets to be able to compare. And then from the financial data, you can see in here, we've got all of our rows and columns. What financial data sets are we looking at? And you can drill right the way down. So you can look at account level, account category level, you can look at formulas. And of course, from a time period, we can look at any day, any month, any period that you want for that particular client. And you can make these charts and graphs and reports branded. You can make them your own colorways. And of course, you can set them up as a practice template that can then become your, back to what I was saying at the beginning, that standard that goes out to every client. So you're really starting to land the messaging about the service that you're delivering to a client. But again, also technology here, we can schedule any of these reports to go out. So if you've got a client that wants, we do have clients now that want weekly management account reports, you can do that. But equally, we can do it on a monthly basis, set it up to automate it. We know the bookkeeping is completed by X day. Therefore, we want the report to go out on Y. You can have it to come to you for review before sending. Or you can just untick that and it'll go straight to the client. And you can very much deliver that automated, systematic, recurring process that will ultimately delight all of your clients. End of my flash story that was really quick. Everyone probably feels like they need to lie down after that. I do.
Thank you, Helen. One question did come in during that. Can you use Futrli for groups to get consolidated forward view of all entities?
It's just about to land. So the team are just finishing it up now. And it will be proper consolidation. So it is our next big release. And it will be consolidation. So you'll build individual budgets or individual forecasts, be able to consolidate those individual budgets and forecasts, and then create reports either at individual entity level or group level, be able to slice and dice it any which way you want. So absolutely. Same for tracking, because that's probably another question that someone's going to ask me in a second. And you'll be able to do forecasting by tracking category as well.
Excellent. Fabulous. Given I said I would try and wrap up reasonable, I will start that process. So we always like to just highlight some of the key takeaways from this and a couple of things that hopefully came out of the conversation that Helen and I have had. So firstly, it all starts with data. I mean, this was a problem that we encountered very early on, that we had access to all of these tools. We simply didn't have the data. If you're doing bookkeeping on a quarterly basis, you can't do this stuff. And I always use the analogy that if you were employed as a financial controller or a bookkeeper in a commercial organization and you only reconciled the bank once a month, how long would you keep your job? Because you kind of wouldn't. So why is it okay that if we're providing an outsourced service that we think it's reasonable to reconcile the bank once a month? It's something we should be doing every day. If you're a business owner, if it's your firm, I bet you reconcile your bank every morning. You open up your general ledger, you go through, you tick all the boxes, and your bank's reconciled. We should be doing the same with clients. If we're not doing that for clients, it's really hard to make this stuff be really valuable, because the quality of the data that goes in drives what comes out. So all starts with the data. Build the relationships. We will only know what clients are really trying to do if we ask them, and we get close enough to those clients. We need to make sure we have the processes to scale. We talked about this, making sure you charge for the value that you deliver. We all do advisory, but in many cases we don't charge for it because, it's just a question. We'll answer that for the client, but we are adding value every time we do that. So we need to build systems and processes that make it very clear what's in scope, what's out of scope, and anything that's out of scope, we need to find a way to price effectively. Clearly, ensure you have the right tech to be able to do this stuff at scale, because that's the point. Helen made the point that there are smaller businesses that you might think don't want or need this stuff, but they kind of do. So how do we make sure that all of our teams understand the conversations they should be having? How do we make sure we've got the technology that gives us those key alerts that Helen so brilliantly demonstrated for us there? And the last point, really, which I hope has come through, this is what our clients need. So it's not a case of just accepting, well, our clients they don't want it. The reason they don't want it is they don't understand the importance. They don't understand why they need it. And that's a job for us as professional accountants and bookkeepers to have that conversation and help our clients understand that. Anything to add on that, Helen, in terms of the things that we think are really important that people need to think carefully about?
No, I think they're the five key ones, and I think I've spoken enough. Apart from I've spotted our typo in the last one.
Oh, sorry. It's what
It's what client
clients.
really needs. We
Clients
want
really,
more
not just
than
one
one.
client. You've got loads of clients and they all need it. In terms of really wrapping this up, now on the screen right now, you will see a QR code. This is a 14-day trial to Futrli by Sage with an offer to get 50% off for the first 3 months. So we will be sending a copy of the recording to everybody. That QR code will also be in the email that you receive.
Can I just add a quick note on that, Will? I talked before about a pilot. This is where you can pilot, lock it on the 14-day free trial, stick in, test it with a client you know really well, then take advantage of 50% off. I mean, for 10 clients, it's £200 a month. So that would be £100 a month to fund the trial on your clients that you're going to pilot it with. Let's go and look at the impact we can have. A client did this for us. He's one of our big clients, Izzy. I'm going to do a case study on him. First client that he won paid for one of his juniors for the year, and he just went out with what I've just showed everybody today, with a client that didn't do anything more than compliance work, and immediately decided it wanted some funding and to grow. So go and use this, use the 50% off, use our team to help you get up and running, and pilot what you could potentially do with your clients, but also the potential profit and ROI impact for you.
Yes, and I was speaking to Izzy recently, and he did mention that. So
You did really well. He was so chuffed with himself.
it's true. It's true. It
It is
definitely
a true
happened.
story.
If anybody has any final questions, do pop those in the Q&A box, and we will tackle them. But I'm sure Helen and her team will be very happy to pick up and
Of
have
course we will.
conversations with any of you. We will send the recording and the QR code there for you to engage. All that is left to be said is thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday morning to come and join the session. Helen and I are also talking together at Accountex in the App Advisory
We
Plus
are.
Theatre. I should have prepared and told you what time of the day it is.
I
But
don't think I know either. But they'll probably have to kick us off the stage. They'll be like that.
yes.
You two leave, just leave. But we will find
So
out.
do come and see us if you are at Accountex and join our session there as well. But enjoy the last week of April. Thank you for taking time to join us, Helen. Thank you for
Thank you for having me.
yet again. I always thoroughly enjoy our conversations and hope everybody else got some value from it as well. So enjoy your day. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on next month's App of the Month webinar, and we'll see you at Accountex. Thanks, everybody. Have
Bye.
a great day.
See you
Thank you
later.
very much, Helen.